She's like, I just wanted to call to say thank you. I have Crohn's disease, and I was going to have 80% of my digestive tract removed. And on a whim, somebody told me I should drink your kefir. So I tried it and I felt immediately, instantly better, to the point where I canceled my surgery and I'm off all of my medications and I'm just drinking your kefir and I'm symptom free.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. It is a very special episode, and it's a little bit longer than it usually is because this conversation was so juicy that we did not want to stop. I am interviewing someone who I've known actually through a mutual friend for a bunch of years. She's the Lifeway president and CEO, Julie Smolansky. So we just talk about her amazing career and how at 27 she became the very youngest female CEO of a publicly traded company. And all along the way, what she needed to do to sort of be, having some sharp elbows in this male dominated world. And they've done in the past 5 years, they've doubled their growth in the past 5 years. And now they're not just in the US, they're in Mexico, Ireland, France, South Africa, all over the place. And it's not just that. What really inspires me about Julie is the amount of philanthropic work that she does to empower women around safety, around, she was a rape survivor, and basically that drove her philanthropic work, doing a bunch of documentaries, getting 400,000 untested kits tested in the US. So many good things while she's running this massive company. So I hope that you are as inspired by Julie as I am and that you enjoy this interview. I'm super pumped to welcome Julie. Is it Smolansky?
You've got it.
Yes. I asked my husband because he's not Russian or, well, really, you are Russian, right? It's like the former
I'm
Soviet Union?
Ukrainian. Yeah, I'm Ukrainian
Ukrainian.
actually. I was
From
born in
Kiev?
Kiev.
Yes.
Yeah, but at the
Okay.
time it was the Soviet Union.
Got it.
And at the time people didn't even really speak Ukrainian. That was what, that was taken away culturally from us. But yeah, technically, I guess I was born in Ukraine.
Yes. I actually asked my husband how to pronounce it to make sure I pronounced it right. He's Hungarian first generation, so a lot of your story really resonates with me as well. So I cannot wait to get to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so imagine like we all come to the things that we do in lots of different ways and for lots of different reasons. So I want you to tell the story because you really have. I mean, I seeded a little bit at the top of the podcast episode, but I really want to hear it from you. If you're a Marvel, movie, let's say hero, you would have this origin story. And the thing is, you really do have this origin story. So tell us how you got from where you were, because you were going to school, to you were involved with psychology. That was your interest. That's what you were going to do, and really not join the family business. How did you end up here? Tell us everything. How your parents came, the whole shebang.
I love it. Grab a glass of Lifeway Kefir and sit back. So yeah, I was born in Kiev at the height of the Cold War, and through a small slit in the Iron Curtain, we were able to escape. We defected in the middle of the night with a suitcase. I was just born. I was one, and lived in Rome for 3 months in exile, landed in Chicago at O'Hare on August 4th, 1976. We just hit our 49th anniversary of being in America. And we were the first of 48 Soviets that were settled that year. And the year prior, there was 12, so we were 48. And then a wave of exodus of people leaving and escaping from communism. My dad hated communism. He read the U.S. Constitution. He's like, this is the place. This is where I can raise my family. He was entrepreneurial, hard worker, had major aspirations, dreamed big, was just a trailblazer, and he wanted freedom. So we are in Chicago 2 years after settling. My mom learned English watching General Hospital. He was an engineer by trade. Yeah, this is the typical immigrant story. We learn English from the soap operas.
Right.
So yeah, Dynasty, Edge of Night, One Life to Live. That's how
Oh
my
my
mom
God.
learned English. So,
Love it.
but she opens up the first Soviet, like Slavic deli. We could say, Russian, Ukrainian. We don't know what identity is what, especially the diaspora of that community. But
Right.
we could say Slavic. I think that kind of puts the whole umbrella on the group, and Russian speaking individuals.
Yeah.
So she opens up the first deli in Rogers Park. I was a kid. I grew up behind the counter helping, putting price tag stickers on inventory, wrapping boxes over the holidays. I really grew up in the deli and in the warehouse. And then so that's how we started in the food industry at this and then my mom became an importer and distributor of Eastern European food. So they went to a trade show in Germany in 88. And my dad would work his 9 to 5 job. Just backtrack a little. He worked nine to
Yeah.
five and as an engineer, and then at 5 he'd go and relieve my mother, and she'd go home and take care of me and my brother, and he would stay till the very last customer. And that could be, all immigrant community. That could be 11, 12 o'clock. Sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning. The last customer was still coming because everyone's working, labor hours and
Right.
hard jobs.
Right.
So okay, so they're in Germany now. It's 88, and they buy a couple bottles of kefir in the grocery store because in Eastern Europe it was consumed already. And he drinks it and he says, "Oh my God, America has everything, but it doesn't have kefir. I miss this so much." Like he had a taste of nostalgia, because
Mm.
kefir in the Soviet Union was like a staple. It was like, Coca-Cola or Pepsi. In America, in the Soviet Union, everyone had kefir for over 2,000 years. It was a staple from cradle to grave. People consumed it. They used it medicinally.
Sure.
My ancestors, my great grandmothers, all my lineage, all this is their recipe that they protected, preserved, nurtured, protected, and it survived 2,000 years. It stood the test of time because of the medicinal benefits that people experience, that they didn't know. They intuitively in their gut felt like kefir helped them feel better.
Mm.
And so this word of mouth, it survived through word of mouth. And then science and research in 1909, Dr. Elie Metchnikoff, he won a Nobel Prize for his research around kefir. He did the very first research science study around probiotics, fermented milk, kefir, the microbiome. What we talk about today is the microbiome. He was
Sure.
the first. He's considered the father of immunity. So growing up in my household, my dad talked about him like he was a rock star. He was like Eddie Vedder. All I heard was Dr. Metchnikoff. Look at the research of Dr. Metchnikoff.
Right.
So he was really like an icon in my house. And so my dad was like, I can't believe, like, in the Soviet Union, we grew up on this. How there's not one bottle in America. It's unknown, and they don't know that it's important to health. Like, how do Americans not know this? Anyways, 6 months after he came back from the Germany trip, he launched Lifeway out of our basement. I had the very, very first tablespoon of kefir ever made. And I remember that moment vividly. And then he launched Lifeway. I went to ran my first in-store demo when I was 11 years old, went to my very first trade show when I was 12 years old, worked the booth, and really spent my whole, life kind of, as a kid, my kid life, helping my parents in their business, helping Lifeway, any spring break, summer break, working with them. But I wanted to go into psychology. I had, like many kids, this idea that I want to change the world. And as cliche as that was, that I really wanted to change the world. I wanted to improve people's lives. I wanted to improve my own life. I think a lot of times we enter into these kinds of careers because we seek better for ourselves. And,
Right.
Through community, we could kind of help ourselves. I was curious. I wanted to understand why there were certain, like, mental health issues happening in my family for myself. I was experiencing my own mental health crisis. My family was experiencing a crisis. Like, even though we were immigrants and starting these businesses, my family was very traumatized. We come from a line of Holocaust survivors. My
Sure.
great grandmother was the Holocaust. My
Wow.
grandmother survived. She hid in Baba Yar. They were murdered in Baba Yar. My grandmother, I learned, was only one of 30 known survivors of Baba Yar. So I think about that lineage and the trauma that my family has endured without any resources or skills to be able to
Right.
move through this. I think that's something that it's a big challenge for immigrants, and not every immigrant was able to stabilize and integrate into US, American society. So it's definitely, something I think that we still actively work through. But so I wanted to be in psychology. I experienced had my own experiences with trauma, with surviving assault. I was very active in the space. I helped write the first teen dating violence curriculum when I was 15 years old in Chicago. That curriculum is still being used in schools. Hundreds and thousands of kids have been trained around this curriculum. So I'm super proud of some of that work. I became a rape crisis counselor in college. I'm still a certified rape crisis counselor. And then I graduated, and I went to work as an in-home family counselor in Chicago with kids who have been removed from their home, and they were in the DCFS system. And I will tell you very honestly, I so commend all the work of mental health professionals, because it is such a high burnout. It is, I know we're going to talk about boundaries, being able to have the boundaries between yourself and your clients and what you're hearing and what you're seeing is really, really challenging, especially for like a young starting out professional expert. It's high burnout, and especially the kinds of populations I was working with was really high crisis, high trauma. And I was
Yeah.
definitely taking in some of that trauma myself. And I just found thinking gosh, I'm never happy. I'm always really sad. And a
Of
lot of it
course.
was because of the work that I was doing. But I still had this urging desire to help people and change people's lives. And
Right.
so that never left me. But what I had a crisis in the field with, in the middle of, again, working in really challenging neighborhoods, got myself in the middle of a gang fight, and got really caught in the middle. And I thought I was going to die. It was very, very scary. I definitely saw my life flash before my eyes. I was shaking. I got to my clients. Luckily went through unharmed, but I got to my clients' home, and they were helping me. I mean, I was fully shaking, and they were and I understand what they were experiencing. And, they live with bullet holes through their walls, and that's how these kids are growing up. So it really gave me an appreciation for my community and the
Right.
challenges that
Yeah.
our neighbors are experiencing. And, it stems from so many things, but, food insecurity is a big piece of it. And I mean, we can go on and on about it, but that's where the trajectory of my life really changed that day, because the next day, so I quit my job that night. And I was still
Yeah.
in grad school. I was already in grad school for psych. And I went to my dad's office the next day, and I said, can I work at your company while I finish grad school and just work part-time? I'll be data entry, or just give me your entry level position, just something to tie me over. He said, sure, of course. And then 2 weeks later, I just was listening to what he was
Right.
saying. Not like I didn't hear what he was saying my whole life, but suddenly in this moment, just where I was in my life, it just hit me oh my God, I can help people. I can still help people through a business process, through a for-profit business. I don't have to go to the hardest trauma stories to
Yeah.
feel like I've impacted the world. And my dad really needed help too. At the time, there were only
Right.
10 people that were
Right.
working. The business was 4 million in revenue, 5 million in revenue. And he really needed help. So I was his first English speaking person. And I've been with the company since we were, about 4 or 5 million in revenue until today. And so that's how I found myself in his office. And he was so happy, because he really wanted me to take over. He was grooming me and he wanted me to run the company. And I really resisted. He was like, please just take one business class in school, take one finance class in college. And I was like, no, I am doing psych, abnormal psych, this, how helping people change, whatever. And he was like just devastated. We had a lot of fights about this, and he was right.
Yeah.
But, it all works out. It all works out.
I heard this story that you told about you guys being somewhere together, and Lee Iacocca was there with his daughter.
I didn't even know who Lee Iacocca was, but my father was like fanboying over him, like, "Wow, this is an icon." I was like, "Okay," but he was in awe, and then yeah, my dad's was like, "One day you're going to be standing here, and you're going to be running your own company, and taking over Lifeway." And Christy Hefner was another one that was a big role model for us, for me. He pointed out, but that is one of the reasons. I mean, I think I have survived because all of this, because my father really believed in me, and even believed in me before when I did not believe in myself. He said, "You have no idea the skills that you have, what I see in you. You're gonna put my kefir into every refrigerator in America." And really now it's, almost around the world. So, he believed. But, I'm dedicated to improving people's lives and using the company, to help have these very important conversations. And just one last point around why I love it so much, a couple things, but I remember in college, but when I still wanted to go into psych, having a very severe mental health crisis, very severe. I was very, very scared. And I went to my dad's office to talk to him. And I was like, can you help me? Can I will you pay for therapy? And he was like, of course. And as we started talking, I was having issues with eating and disordered eating, I would say. And he said, of course, go to therapy, I'll pay, don't worry. But you need to drink kefir. You need to drink kefir. That will change your life. That's going to, I don't want to say, that will heal you. But, he said, this will be a change for you. And he was right. I rolled my eyes when he said it, because I was like, okay, I understand it works for digestion or immunity. Like, we've known that. But for mental health, that was not something that was ever talked about yet. I thought he was like crazy.
So the mind gut connection that a lot of people are talking about now, your father was talking about all the way back then.
1994, that was the first time that my dad, to me, talked about the mental health
Wow.
connection, the mind gut connection. And today, and as of like the last 8, 9 years,
Wow.
science and research has discovered the mind gut connection, that the microbiome through the vagus nerve is connected and talking to the mind, to the brain, and that there's brain health benefits, that kefir can help reduce stress, depression, and anxiety. An imbalance of microbiome in the gut has been found to contribute to various addictions, various mental health issues. And so we're just starting to learn about the microbiome, the impact on it overall, not just mental health, digestion, and immunity, but also skin health. There's a skin gut connection. And so we are just on the tipping point of understanding gut, the friendly bacteria, the contribution of wellness with kefir. And then another story that was also kind of led me to this is I was already at the company working, but a woman called from New York, from Jamaica, New York. And she starts telling me, this was late at night. It was like 8 o'clock at night, just me and my dad in the office. And she's like, I just wanted to call to say thank you. I have Crohn's disease, and I was going to have 80% of my digestive tract removed. And on a whim, somebody told me I should drink your kefir. So I tried it and I felt immediately, instantly better, to the point where I canceled my surgery and I'm off all of my medications and I'm just drinking your kefir and I'm symptom free. And I just think that call really changed my excitement. It made me think, wow, this we saved somebody from surgery. We got her off medications and she's feeling better. This is worth my time. This is worth, you have Mary Oliver, the poet, said, what are you going to do with your one fabulous life? This is a great thing to do with my fabulous life, and I just am so excited. As often as I've told the story, thousands, millions of times, telling it to you
Exactly.
today brings me as much of excitement as it did, 35 years ago. So,
All right, so tell us this. So your journey now bring us up to the you stepping into leadership, right? At
yeah.
27, you became the youngest female CEO of a publicly traded company. How was that for you? Because I know, just tell the story. I'm not gonna ruin the story. Just tell the story.
Well, on a beautiful sunny summer morning on June 9th, my mom called me and asked me to come home. And then I was notified, or was told, that my father had passed away from a sudden heart attack. And it was devastating. He had just called me the day before. He was healthy, living the prime of his life, 55 years old, just so proud of himself and, what we had already accomplished. The business was about 12 million in sales at the time. And overnight, that night, as friends and family come together to the spouse and the family, surviving family, to support, instead of feeling supported, I felt I was attacked, actually. My father's best friend, like 3 feet away from me, said, there's no way that a 27-year-old girl can run a company. This is over. Lifeway's over. Sell all of your stock. And it was devastating. It really was fuel to my fire. And I use that statement every day. I love the naysayers, say thank you to the naysayers, because yeah, he fueled my fire. I thought back about, all the lessons my father taught me, how he believed in me. My father used to trigger me intentionally, probably not therapist approved tactic, but he used to, immigrant mentality, scarcity here, but he used to, trigger me to the point of just absolute like just frustration, like tears, anger. He would trigger me intentionally, and then he'd laugh and he'd say, put up his hand and say, punch me. And I'd punch him, and he'd punch me harder, and I'd punch him harder, and he'd laugh. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, you don't understand. I'm trying to teach you something. One day you're gonna thank me. In this life, you need to learn how to take a punch, and you need to learn how to give a punch. And that's a lesson you need to learn, because this is going to be a hard journey. And I do really thank him for it. As hard as that was, and maybe there's a different approach in how to teach, resiliency and, fighting for yourself. That was the way he taught it to me. And it stuck with me. And, to this day, I'm fighting it out. I've been swimming in a sea of sharks from day one. They are all around me. They have underestimated me, and I love being underestimated. They've counted me out so many times. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a room. I'm the only woman. Sometimes it was like, even like a girl, that I was like, felt like I was just a girl walking in a room of, very powerful, gray haired, white men. And I battled it out in every room. I just walked in and I felt like I deserve to be here. I belong here. And I put my, crown on, put my head up high, and, maybe you fake it till you make it. But here I am, it's all this time later, but it was devastating. Next morning, after my dad passed away, the stock crashed. NASDAQ halted trading. and things were in motion. I had a shady lawyer who tried to undermine the company and insert himself as an intermediate CEO to then sell off the company for pennies. I fought him off. He didn't win. I was voted in as CEO basically the next day, and I've put my head down. I said failure is not an option. I promised my dad that I would see his vision through, and every single day, this is what I do. There's, not a day goes by when I don't work on the business and advocating for better gut health, better food systems, women in entrepreneurship, immigrants in entrepreneurship, a whole gamut of communities that I really feel like I want to advocate for and support and embrace.
And you do. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you have documentary films, you advocate a lot for trauma survivors, and you have these impactful documentaries. So just share with us a little bit about how you got into that, because again, it's like I see your trajectory, Jewel, where it's like you're always finding these ways of like amplifying your positive ripple in the world, and the documentaries are like this really beautiful way of doing that. So tell us about what got you excited and how'd you get involved with that?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, like I mentioned, I thought that I was going to go into that space and work with trauma survivors. Um, so it's something that is near and dear to my heart, but I did move into like business and CPG. And so, with this new information around gut health and mental health, I thought, well, this is a nice pathway, a nice opening to kind of go back into what I,
Yeah.
was in love with. And so I really love that could be a conversation that we can be involved, that I can be involved in, that, because that's my first passion. And well, when I had my daughter, so my first daughter was born in 2008, so she's 17, and then I got a 15-year-old. And when they were born, I just said to myself, wow, the world is still a very dangerous place. The statistics around violence against women, 1 in 3 women experience rape, sexual assault, domestic violence, or will be by an intimate partner. So these statistics have been the same statistics that I've been hearing since I was a teenager. Now it's,
Right.
Years, decades later, statistics haven't changed, and there's no plan to get to change them. There's, nobody's really working on ending violence against women. This was before Me Too. So I made a promise. I thought, what's the point of having power and privilege and influence in the most powerful country in the world, in the position that I'm in? Sitting as a female CEO in a publicly traded company. I have a platform and a megaphone that I could be using that no other CEO probably can speak to with this kind of lived experience. And, it's not just about me, but if you just think about the population, like, half of us in the workforce have experienced a significant trauma like this. Like, how does that
Right.
impact our work life? How does that, so many ways, the ripple effects of that. And so I think, having like a trauma informed leadership perspective is something that's important to me. But yeah, when I made a promise to my girls that day, when they were born, to each of them, that I would take more risks, be more brave with my own personal story, that I wasn't just going to work on the issue, but I would come out publicly as a survivor. I think it's very important for other survivors to see role models. Like for me, my only role model as a survivor was Oprah Winfrey. I don't need to use her last name, Oprah.
Exactly.
That was the only person that I knew that was out as a survivor. And it wasn't until Me Too that there were more examples of women who experienced, horrific violence and persevere and are resilient and keep going. And I really needed that. And I thought, if I could find the bravery to come out myself, that would be really impactful. And so a long time had tried to figure out how that could look, what that would look like. And I'd worked on some other films, supporting some friends in some other film work. And I was like, wait, I could really scale this conversation with a tool like a film. So, how could I not just like sit on a panel or do an interview for an
Right.
article, but like really create a tool that could be used to have this conversation at scale when I'm no longer here, even like let this continue to be a conversation that we have. And so, some film kind of became part of my, passions. And so, yeah, I was a producer on The Hunting Ground, which highlighted college campus sexual assault and the cover up of college campus. That movie was, it won an Emmy and it was nominated for an Oscar. And I had the opportunity to share the stage with Lady Gaga, who wrote the song It Could Happen to You for the movie. And that song was
Wow.
nominated. And so for the 2016 Oscars, myself and 50 Survivors and Gaga, we shared the stage and came out. And I really believe it was like the ripple effect for Me Too, because it was every A-list celebrity in the audience, and they were all sobbing. And I really think that like it put a seed in their head. And 10 months later, Me Too broke. That film contributed to over 300 Title IX investigations across the most powerful universities in our country. It led to policy changes. It changed the conversation for sure. So I'm super proud of it, super proud of my bravery. That's kind of how I came out as a survivor. My life has really
Yeah.
never been the same since. It's a lot. It's a lot to take on, but I'm also, ready for it. And then there were some other movies. I did one that exposed like violence against women in Muslim majority societies
So,
called
Honor
Honor
Diaries.
Diaries. Yeah,
Yeah.
Honor Diaries. Homestretch, which highlighted homelessness in Chicago and other urban cities. Another great film. So there's a couple. I'm working on a few others. So I do love that space. Very, very powerful. Using film. And even today, like The Hunting Ground, I still have friends who tell me that their kids saw The Hunting Ground for high school orientation or college orientation. Like, that makes me so happy. Like, we're really creating the vocabulary for
Yeah.
young people to share, to talk about, this issue.
And how to stay safe. I mean, so much of it too is about the proactive. Another thing that I love that you co-founded Test 400K, nonprofit organization advocating to end the backlog of 400,000 untested kids in the U.S. And we know this problem still exists, but
Yeah.
just so love that, because how can there be any justice if they never prioritize actually testing the kids?
It's the biggest human rights violation women in America face. This is an atrocity. My sheriff in Illinois found 50 untested kits in a police storage locker room going back to 1979, just sitting there. It's just so disrespectful. It's a crime. It's infuriating because every time that they don't test a kit, they leave violent perpetrators out in the community to go repeat and repeat. In Detroit, where they did get a handle on their kits, they had 10,000 kits in backlog, and they had 2,500 hits, 700 repeat perpetrators going back to every state in the country. So it's not like a Detroit problem or a Chicago problem. It's a nationwide problem. And when I think about, things that would move the needle on ending violence against women, this is one of those that is within our
Yep.
control. We should test
Yep.
the evidence that these people have come in and their body is a crime scene, and they've submitted their body to this very invasive, traumatic testing procedure, evidence collection, and then it's just in a black hole. It's it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so these are the things I said, I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to, I fix things. I see problems and I get to action. Like, let's go. Let's fix this. Let's do it. And so we put out a call to action to every governor in the country. We sent them an untested kit, a kit, like a, mock up, like a kit, but not used, obviously. We FedExed it to them. We published the numbers. We showed their constituents that you can track them. You can do it quickly, expedited. You could, see where they are. And this could all be done in like 24 hours. It shouldn't take 30 years.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we have that technology today. And I do think that that's going to get better and better. But yeah, we started that conversation. We had several governors, sign the call to action, and we have seen reform in every state since launching. And so, I don't have a ton of bandwidth to work on it, but I do what I can.
And the thing is, it makes a difference though, because what you're doing is exactly what you said earlier in the interview, which is when you have a platform, are you doing something good with it as well, right? You can have, and you do have, a for-profit company, and you really are really doing incredibly good work in the world. So
Thank
let
you.
me ask you, what is your vision for the future of Lifeway and your own personal mission? Like, where do you see this going? Because
Well,
you're exponentially growing. You're scaling like crazy,
yes.
it seems like.
We are. It's mind blowing. It's been quite a roller coaster. Yeah, the last 6 years we've doubled our business. Increased EBITDA. We're profitable. We have money in the bank. We're doing great things in communities. We're international. Mexico, UAE, Dubai, Caribbean. So it's very exciting. I mean, I see that the conversation around gut health and kefir will only continue to grow. This is only we haven't scratch the tip of the iceberg on this, and we're really a brand that meets the moment, a brand on the move. It's really, really exciting that the conversation has really happened around gut health and is happening, and more research and science is. I think that we're only at the beginning of this, and there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more distribution to be gained. I really believe that kefir will be in every refrigerator, everywhere we eat, work, play. That we will be able to impact people's health and wellness in a real way that's not very expensive. This is something you can go to the grocery store, you can get it, it's accessible, it's available at Walmart, at Target, at Whole Foods, from premium to Main Street. It's available. So I think it's one of the best investments you can do and make for your life, and it's really cool to see it viral on TikTok now. People are posting about drinking it in the evening and having deep bloat and all these great things, reducing inflammation.
I just saw you on Katie, you and Katie Couric
That's
and
right.
someone else. You guys were doing something, and I was like, check out Kefir. There's just Lifeway is everywhere, in a good way,
In a good
where
way.
it's like substituting. So it was like using Kefir instead of using yogurt, let's say,
That's
in
right.
this recipe that you guys were doing. All right, I want to ask you a question that's a non sequitur, but I ask everybody.
Let's hear it.
So personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle, and how did you overcome it if you have? Because honestly, with your story and what you've done, boundaries, like you have had good boundaries to survive as a woman in this male dominated, and you're still fighting. So, what is it for you, the most challenging boundary struggle?
I would say I actually did not have good boundaries, and I think it took me a really long time to get to them. I think that's probably a lot. I didn't even know what boundaries were. I mean, I've been in therapy since I was 15, and when my therapist would talk about boundaries, I didn't even know what that meant. I'm like, I don't even know, what do you mean boundary? What kind of boundary? Like, have a boundary
Right.
with your mom, have a boundary. I'm like, what is that? What do you mean boundary? I really, it took me until just very recently to understand what that meant. Okay, so the biggest, because of that, and again, I think it's out of context. Like, I've an immigrant family that's so traumatized from so many wars. Therapy and mental health was considered not like a taboo thing. No one talked about that. That's not a conversation. I have Soviet parents that were still very like abrasive. There was no warm and fuzzies. My mom wasn't making brownies after school. That wasn't like a thing. I was at the deli packing up sprats, and
Right.
so the hardest for me, and this is somewhat already in the public domain, but my brother went through, substance abuse and, alcoholism. He showed up intoxicated to very important meetings. I had spent years enabling him, covering up for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would go and do the work, do the assignment, And I have never been in trouble in my life. I was a good girl, good immigrant daughter. Kind of kept my head down, didn't want to cause waves, didn't want to put extra pressure on my parents. And he was, out of control with drinking. And it really, I did what I could control, which was, do the work for the company, build the business. And, I tried to like stay in my lane of what I could control. But then, with addicts, with people who drink, uh that bleeds over into every part of life, and it bled into the business, it bled into the family, and it's why we're here today. And it's been horrific. Unfortunately, he was terminated. um you know I have a restraining order against him. It's been very, very surreal, very painful. I wish it wasn't so, but this has been my biggest boundary challenge that has taken me decades to unpack.
Mm.
Um, and it was so bad that, it impacted my mental health because I was being gaslit. I was like, how can I fix this? How can I hack this? What can I do? And I can't tell you how many times, urgent emergency calls were made to police stations, hospitals, like drop everything and look for him. We're in crisis. Where is he? Is
Yep.
he dead? Is he this? I mean, I just think about the bandwidth that I gave up and how much of my own personal
Mm.
resources I gave up in kind of keeping him alive, propping him up, covering for him, fixing mistakes that he would make. It's just all my time went to fixing mistakes. And it was just frustrating because I know what the business could do. I know what I could
Yep.
do. And I want to rise above the family. I want to rise outside of this trauma and this
Yeah.
cycle. And I want to get out from underneath it. And as
Mm.
hard as I worked, I did the therapy, I did the work, I have the
Right.
receipts. They didn't want to join me on this process. They didn't want to walk the walk with me. They didn't want to climb the mountain with me. I would have
Mm.
gladly taken my family on my shoulders and carried them, but they didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And that was very hard to let go. I think that's the biggest lesson of addiction, is that you have to let go, and you can't keep, it will drown me. That's how I felt, that like continuing was going to take me down. I wasn't going to survive. And it got so bad that I really contemplated taking my own life.
Mm.
I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know. I was so in such a dark place. It was so, so hard that I could not find a path. I knew that, there would be consequences to his departure, that it would be devastating in my family. I mean, I have
Yep.
like a Russian mobster kind of family, if you want to give yourself an
Yeah.
idea of what the family's like, dynamics. And
Yeah.
I'm a girl, and, and it was very valid, very challenging. And
Yeah.
this was the hardest. And even today, every time I just think about like, how could it be different, or what could I, going back or whatever, it's like, no, there is a
Yep.
boundary. There has been violence perpetrated. There is going to
Yep.
be accountability on it. There's a choice with everything.
Yep.
There is a choice, and there's a cost, not just a choice. There is a cost with every choice, one way or another. There's a cost to
Yes.
letting him stay. There's a cost to, ending things. There's a
Yep.
cost to staying in the family. There's a cost to leaving the family.
Yep.
But I knew that this was absolutely critical to my own survival and to
Yeah.
the survival of the company. And I really credit the bravery of that moment of me, making the very painful decisions of moving towards that. And I mean, I had an outside board, and that helped, because the board really had to handle this. I abstained from most of the conversations around this, but it was
It's
very
still it's
painful.
still it's still brutal. Jewel, there's a lot of addiction in my family as well, and I heard this saying that struck me as so. I remember hearing it, and I remember just started bawling my eyes out when I heard it, because it struck me as so true that alcoholics don't have relationships; they take hostages.
Oh yeah. That's absolutely true. They do. And I think, listen, we're not the first family to experience it. We're not the last family. We're not the
Of
first
course.
company. We're not the last company.
Right.
I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned out of this. I'm very proud of how I have led through this. I've put the company first ahead of my family, ahead of the relationship, at my own. Damage to myself. I have
Mm-hmm.
endured what I would never want anyone to endure, what I have
Yep.
gone through, and in
Yep.
getting out from under this. It has been absolutely horrific. I have no words to describe how painful and tragic the last 6, 7, 8 years, really our whole life has been. And I understand. I have full empathy and sympathy for people who have addiction. I get it.
Yeah, but what you're saying is
Yeah.
true, that all decisions, and there's a cost, and when you're dealing with a company, there's also decisions that have to be made, and not making a decision then becomes a decision too. So you were in the unenviable
Yeah.
position
Yeah.
to have to make the decision. So right now, like for people who want to follow you, who are, who want to get Kefir or Kefir, depending on how you want to say it. So tell us all the places where people can follow you and can follow Lifeway.
Well, follow me at Julie Smolansky. So my name, I'm just at Julie Smolansky. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, all the places.
Yeah.
And then Lifeway Kefir is another place to follow. I am Test 400K is where some of the nonprofit work sits. So you can do at Test 400K. And, I would say, really follow me because I will be sharing a
Right.
lot of new projects that are coming up. I have some new things that are launching outside of Lifeway that I'm really excited about. And, I have a lot of exciting things in the works in the coming years.
Thank you for coming, for spending so much time, for really being an inspiration, for being a female leader who's also really doing great things in the world. This was really a pleasure, and I really appreciate you.
Terri, it is such an honor to get to talk to you because I know we've had like some conversations offline and over the years I follow your work. It is so important what you're doing and really modeling what boundaries look like and what tough conversations look like, and the toughest conversations are with yourself, and
Right.
you're teaching us how to do that. So I am so grateful for your work and for you seeing my work and inviting me on to share. It's awesome. I'm honored and such a privilege.
Well, thank you for coming.